Nkrumah nous a laissé une parole qui résonne plus fort que jamais. We must unite. Il avait déjà averti, l'Afrique doit s'unir ou périr. En est la confirmation éclatante. Avec la Confédération des États du Sahel, nos 3 pays, le Niger, le Mali, le Burkina Faso, ont lancé l'embryon réel des futurs États africains. Ni une utopie, c'est un acte patriotique, un acte souverain, mais surtout révolutionnaire. Les dirigeants de la Confédération des États du Sahel marchent aujourd'hui dans les pas de Kwame Nkrumah, matérialisant enfin son appel visionnaire à l'unité africaine. Et nous espérons avec force que sur l'ensemble du continent africain, nous réaliserons et rejoindront ce chemin afin de réaliser le rêve ardent du père du panafricanisme, pour voir une Afrique unie, une Afrique forte et une Afrique surtout indivisible. Je tiens à saluer avec gratitude et respect l'engagement du président John au Niger et au Burkina Faso à marquer un geste fort de fraternité panafricaine. Ce déplacement n'était pas diplomatique seulement, c'était un acte de solidarité, un signal d'unité, une main tendue vers les peuples en marche vers leur souveraineté. Le Niger ne l'oubliera pas de la coopération panafricaine. Elle portera les aspirations profondes de notre continent, la justice réparatrice pour les crimes du passé, la reconnaissance du rôle mondial de l'Afrique dans la construction du XXIe siècle, l'accélération du commerce interafricain comme levier de puissance et la consolidation de la paix et la sécurité par les Africains eux-mêmes. Aujourd'hui, nous commémorons les 80 ans du 5e congrès du panafricanisme, le congrès de Manchester. Ce moment où les peuples africains et la diaspora décidèrent qu'ils ne seraient plus jamais des instruments des ambitions étrangères. Mais nous ne sommes pas venus ici pour célébrer une date. L'Afrique affronte les mêmes forces prédatrices, le pillage des ressources, les ingérences, la domination monétaire, les conditions humiliantes, la fabrication surtout de l'insécurité. Mais il y a une différence fondamentale avec hier. Les peuples ne sont plus manipulables. Ils sont éveillés. Les peuples sont debout et les peuples sont prêts. Dans l'espace de l'AES, une dynamique historique est en cours, la reconquête totale de la souveraineté. Et ce combat n'est dirigé contre aucune nation, aucune civilisation, aucun peuple. Il est dirigé contre la domination, contre la dépendance et contre la soumission. Ici, au mémorial Kwame Nkrumah, nous devons le dire clairement, l'Afrique ne sera respectée que lorsqu'elle sera unie. L'Afrique sera souveraine que lorsqu'elle contrôlera son sol, son sous-sol, son ciel, mais surtout son destin. L'Afrique ne sera libre que lorsqu'elle parlera d'une seule voix. Le 80e anniversaire du 5e congrès de Manchester n'est pas un hommage de nostalgie. C'est un rappel à l'ordre, une convocation historique et une injonction à marcher. Kwame Nkrumah nous regarde, Sékou Touré nous regarde, Amical Cabral nous regarde, Patrice Lumumba, Gamal Abdel Nasser, Thomas Sankara nous regarde également, sans oublier Jomo Kenyatta, Haïlé Sélassié également, qui nous observe. Et au nom des peuples du Sahel du Niger, au nom du président de la République, chef de l'État, le général d'armée Abdrahman Chani, et au nom de tous ceux qui ont aimé cette Afrique au point de mourir pour elle, je vous dis ceci. L'heure n'est plus à la supplication, l'heure n'est plus à l'attente, l'heure est actuellement pour la reconquête, l'heure est à l'unité, l'heure est à la révolution africaine. Et pour finir, je tiens à adresser mes plus sincères félicitations aux initiateurs, aux organisateurs de cette conférence exceptionnelle. Bravo à tous ceux, à toutes celles qui, de près ou de loin, ont contribué au succès de cette conférence. Vous avez permis à l'Afrique de se retrouver, de réfléchir, mais surtout de se projeter. Merci pour l'accueil chaleureux, pour l'hospitalité exemplaire, pour la générosité du peuple ghanéen, ce magnifique pays, ce pays du panafricanisme. Nous rappelons également que c'est l'Afrique qui sait recevoir, l'Afrique va s'unir et l'Afrique va, Inch'Allah, inspirer. Vive le Ghana, vive la Confédération des États du Sahel, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, vive l'Afrique unie et souveraine, vive le panafricanisme, que Dieu bénisse l'Afrique, que Dieu bénisse les Africains et tous les Afro-descendants. Je vous remercie.
Presidente de Ghana, John Dramani, organismos internacionales, hermanos y hermanas del continente africano y de la diáspora, amigos y amigos de la libertad. Es un honor dirigirme a ustedes en nombre del pueblo y del gobierno de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela y transmitirles un saludo fraterno y solidario del presidente Nicolás Maduro Moro, portador del legado imperecedero del comandante Hugo Chávez Frías, cuyo corazón latinoamericano siempre latió con fuerza por África. Lamento profundamente no poder estar presente con todos ustedes en esta tierra hermana de Ghana, pero como todos sabemos, Venezuela es objeto de una peligrosa e ilegal amenaza por parte de los Estados Unidos en el Mar Caribe, que estamos enfrentando, que marcó un hito en la lucha por la libertad y la dignidad humana. El 80º aniversario del Congreso Panafricano de Manchester de 1945. Este encuentro, celebrado en un momento crucial de la historia, cuando el mundo de dignidad, un grito unánime por la independencia de los pueblos africanos y una reivindicación irrevocable del derecho a la autodeterminación. Del 15 al 21 de octubre de 1945, en la ciudad de Manchester, más de 200 hombres y mujeres del África, el Caribe, los Estados Unidos y Europa se reunieron bajo una misma bandera. George Palmore, Amy Ashwood Garvey y un joven Kwame Nkrumah, junto a otros gigantes del continente africano como Jomo Kenyatta y Hastings Banda. Fue en Manchester donde la demanda de libertad dejó de ser una simple aspiración intelectual y se convirtió en un movimiento de acción política concreta. Allí, bajo el liderazgo de estos grandes visionarios, nació la idea de una África unida, libre y soberana, y que se estableció el compromiso irrevocable de los pueblos africanos para romper las cadenas del colonialismo. Casi a la par de la Conferencia de San Francisco que creó la Organización de las Naciones Unidas en 1945 y años antes de la Declaración Universal de los Derechos Humanos en 1948, el quinto Congreso Panafricano ya consagraba el derecho de todos los pueblos a autogobernarse. Afirmamos, señala la declaración final, el derecho de todos los pueblos colonizados a controlar su destino. Todas las colonias deben ser liberadas del control imperialista externo, sea este político o económico. Los pueblos colonizados deben tener el derecho a elegir su propio gobierno, un gobierno sin restricciones de una potencia extranjera. Decimos a los pueblos de las colonias que deben luchar por esos objetivos que cualesquiera medios a su alcance. Este Congreso pues sentó las bases de la lucha por la descolonización y la autodeterminación. Para Venezuela, contra la esclavitud, el colonialismo y la opresión. Más del 50% de nuestro pueblo tiene ascendencia africana y, sin embargo, no solo nos une una herencia cultural, sino también una historia compartida de resistencia. Como los pueblos africanos, hemos sufrido dominación imperialista, pero también hemos respondido con valentía, esperanza y un inquebrantable deseo de justicia y libertad. El panafricanismo y el bolivarianismo tienen raíces comunes. Ambos luchan por la independencia y la unidad frente a la opresión. Simón Bolívar, al igual que Kwame Nkrumah, comprendió que la verdadera libertad solo se logra a través de la unidad de los pueblos oprimidos. Ambos soñaron con un continente africano y una América Latina que hablase con una sola voz y que juntos pudieran derrotar al imperialismo. A 80 años de aquel histórico congreso, la vigencia del pensamiento panafricanista sigue siendo más que evidente. Aunque el colonialismo formal, enfrentamos un neocolonialismo que se disfraza de medidas económicas coercitivas, bloqueos, sanciones y guerras disfrazadas de intervenciones humanitarias. En Venezuela, como muchos de ustedes saben, hemos sido blanco de una agresión sistemática de parte de intereses imperialistas que buscan doblegar nuestra voluntad soberana. Sin embargo, la solidaridad de África y sus pueblos ha sido inquebrantable. Hoy, más que nunca, necesitamos recordar que la lucha por la independencia no termina, sino que la libertad se defiende día a día y que la unidad del Congreso de Manchester no solo buscaba la liberación de África, sino la construcción de una nueva arquitectura y la organización de la unidad africana, actual Unión Africana. Hoy vivimos un momento histórico y del Caribe deben ser escuchadas con la misma fuerza y respeto que las grandes potencias. Es fundamental que nuestros pueblos sigan caminando juntos de dominación. En importancia de estos lazos, hemos trabajado incansablemente con más de 40 culturas y seguimos fortaleciendo los lazos diplomáticos que nos unen a la madre África. El 80 aniversario del Congreso Panafricano de Manchester no es solo una oportunidad para rememorar los logros de ese encuentro histórico, sino para reafirmar nuestro compromiso con los principios que allí se forjaron. Como dijo Kwame Nkrumah, buscamos la independencia no solo para nosotros, sino para todos los pueblos oprimidos del mundo. Hoy, como ayer, debemos seguir luchando por la libertad y por la justicia, por el derecho de los pueblos a decidir su causa.
Sabemos que la verdadera independencia solo se logra a través de la unidad y la lucha contra el neocolonialismo. No luchamos solo por nosotros, luchamos por esos millones de niñas y niños, jóvenes, mujeres y hombres que si no hacemos nada en el presente continuarán condenados a la exclusión, a las desigualdades, a ser los condenados de la tierra, por la verdadera soberanía de nuestros pueblos y por un mundo en el que la paz, el respeto y la cooperación sean. El colonialismo no ha desaparecido. Si queremos salir de la colonia, debemos ver con claridad dónde persisten las cadenas. Ellos cambiaron el látigo por la deuda externa. En las ayudas, la misma dependencia. El objetivo del imperialismo sigue su curso. Mantener a los pueblos del sur de rodillas, sometidos y saqueados. Desde Venezuela reafirmamos nuestra admiración, respeto y compromiso con el continente africano y renovamos nuestra convicción de que la unidad panafricana y la integración de los pueblos del sur global continuarán siendo imperativos revolucionarios, no opciones. Como dijera Simón Bolívar, la unidad de nuestros pueblos no es una simple quimera de los hombres, sino inexorable decreto del destino. Siguiendo ese camino, juntos lograremos construir un mundo más justo, más libre y verdaderamente africano.
Thank you very much, including to the technical team, for allowing us to receive this very important message. Without taking too much time, I want to invite the delegate from the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Cuba, who on behalf of the leader of Cuba will share a message with us. So welcome, Comrade Lunades Imbaret Chapre.
Muchas gracias. Su Excelencia, John Dramani Mahama, miembros del Frente Progresista Panafricano, delegadas y delegados. Deseo transmitir un saludo revolucionario y antiimperialista de la dirección del Partido Comunista de Cuba y del pueblo cubano a los participantes de este importante evento, que se desarrolla en el primer país del África subsahariana liberada del colonialismo, 12 años después de la realización de la quinta conferencia panafricana. Desde el Caribe, como hijos legítimos de África, ratificamos nuestro compromiso con los principios fundacionales del panafricanismo y rendimos tributos a los delegados que entre el 15 y el 19 de octubre de 1945 se dieron cita en Manchester. Para el inicio de las acciones del quinto Congreso Panafricano, el panafricanismo se africanizó y se abrió el camino para una gesta nacional liberadora, la cual en 4 décadas, la victoria de las 9. Bajo Castro, los cubanos y cubanas reencontraron sus raíces y retornaron como internacionalistas apoyando a los combatientes africanos en las batallas por la independencia y con posterioridad a los estados nacidos de esta gesta. Deseamos rendir homenaje al doctor Nkrumah y de la lucha por la total descolonización. Encuentro el 26 de octubre de 1960 del doctor Nkrumah con el comandante en jefe Fidel Castro Ruz constituye un hito en la historia del panafricanismo. Hermanas y hermanos, en este año 2026 conmemoraremos el centenario de Fidel Castro Ruz, nuestro invicto líder. Nuestros compatriotas, educados en el concepto de Fidel, de que ser internacionalista representa saldar una deuda con la humanidad, han laborado en la mayoría de los países del continente africano. Siendo Cuba llevan la experiencia de lo aprendido y el amor y el respeto recibido en las comunidades donde brindaron sus servicios. Las aulas cubanas han sido testigos de la inteligencia y la laboriosidad de las africanas y los africanos. Miles de niños y jóvenes han cursado el desarrollo. Hoy nuestra patria vive como resultado del recrudecimiento del criminal y genocida bloqueo económico, comercial y financiero impuesto hacia la revolución. Sepan que el pueblo cubano, bajo la conducción del Partido Comunista de Cuba, ha ratificado su compromiso de resistir de manera creativa y continuar en las tareas de la construcción del socialismo. Deseamos que en esta reunión de los panafricanos del siglo XXI agradecer al continente africano su permanente solidaridad, en especial en la batalla contra el bloqueo y la eliminación de Cuba de la espuria lista de supuestos estados patrocinadores del terrorismo. Recientemente en las Naciones Unidas, nuevamente África estuvo con Cuba. Deseamos agradecer especialmente al gobierno de la República de Ghana, del cual hemos recibido un importante donativo material, el cual contribuirá a resolver la compleja situación por la que atraviesan los pobladores de nuestras 5 provincias orientales afectadas por el destructivo huracán. Muchas gracias, Ghana. En esta conferencia ratificamos nuestra solidaridad con el heroico pueblo de Palestina, víctima del genocidio del gobierno sionista de Israel con la complicidad de los Estados Unidos. Condenamos la presencia militar estadounidense en el Caribe Oriental, amenazando a la República Bolivariana de Venezuela y a los países de la región bajo falsos pretextos. Reciban nuestros hermanos y hermanas de la República Árabe Saharaui Democrática un cálido abrazo. Reafirmamos nuestro apoyo al derecho inalienable de ese heroico pueblo. El mundo avanza y el mundo se globaliza. Ya lo hemos dicho. Ojalá lleguemos al día en que toda la humanidad sea una sola familia y todas las riquezas, todas las ciencias, las tecnologías y todos los recursos beneficien a todos. Estas palabras por una conferencia a la cual deseamos éxitos. Reiteramos nuestro apego a un mundo donde predominen la paz y la cooperación. Muchísimas gracias. Hasta la victoria, siempre.
Intervention, I want to say Viva Cuba, Viva Venezuela, Viva Alliance of Sahel States. Comrades, these are very different countries, but what they have in common is that the people of these countries have decided the future that they want to walk and are working towards it. And for that, for the simple decision of deciding how they want to decide their own future, what that must look like, we are seeing illegal blockades of the Cuban people. We are seeing extrajudicial killings and military aggravation outside Venezuela. And we are seeing the same forces that have benefited from imperialism, from slavery, from colonialism, from neocolonialism, for a very simple thing of saying that they want to decide their own future. So comrades, once more, I think it's important for us to clap hands for the brave people who are showing us that the flame that was lit by Kwame Nkrumah continues to burn not only on the African continent, but all over the world. So comrades, the next statement, I want to invite Comrade Joshua Ansah, the Secretary General of the Trade Union Congress of Ghana, to share his solidarity message.
Thank you very much, Chair. No, this way. This is fine. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair. And before I start my speech this afternoon, he said that meaningless unless it links up with the total liberation of African continent. Comrades, Your Excellency, John Dramani Mahama, the President of the Comrade Chair, I want to leverage on the existing protocols and begin my remarks. It is a deep honor to speak before all of you, and I call you change makers, because you are making change, whose convictions continue to uphold the moral foundation of the Pan-Africanism. Comrades, 80 years ago in Manchester, our forebears gathered for the historic 5th Pan-African Congress. They were workers, intellectuals, trade unionists, freedom fighters, farmers, young people and women who shared one conviction, that the liberation and dignity of Africa, people must never be negotiated. They met Africa would chart its own destiny. Today, we meet under similar pressures. Our continent continues to battle the inequalities of the global economy, the exploitation of our labor, the erosion of democratic space, the climate emergency, illicit financial flows, and debt burdens that compromise our capacity to develop. But as we commemorate this historic anniversary, we also celebrate our collective strength, the same strength that empowered the leaders of 1945 to imagine a free and united Africa. Comrades, the fact remains that 80 years on, the message from Manchester still echoes: Africa must unite. Not only for political reasons, but economically, socially, and in defense of the dignity of its workers. For us in the labor movement, the 5th Pan-African Congress was not only a political event, it was a workers' movement. Its resolutions insisted on decent work, fair wages, social protection, and an end to colonial labor practices. Today, these demands remain unsafe workplaces, informality, and the absence of social justice in trade and investment regimes. On behalf of the Trade Union Congress of Ghana, I reaffirm our commitment to Pan-Africanism, to decent work for all, to the African Continental Free Trade Area that uplifts workers and communities, and to a future struggle, but by justice, innovation, and shared prosperity. As we look towards the future, the Pan-African vision must be translated into policies that place working people at the center of Africa's development agenda. Thank you very much.
Joe boy. I learned this in Ghana, comrades. So, make his statement.
Solidarity message by Frente Polisario to the Pan-African Progressive Front. at the commemoration of 80th anniversary of 5th Pan-African Congress. His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana, former President John Kufuor, Comrade Kwesi Price, Chairman of the Socialist Movement of Ghana, members of distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the entire Sahrawi people, who wish to express our sincere appreciation to our esteemed organization for convening this significant commemoration of 18th anniversary of 50th for reminder of shared struggle that continues to unite African people in the pursuit of liberation, dignity, freedom, and democracy. The Sahrawi people remain steadfast in their national resistance for self-determination and independence, inspired by the same ideals that guided our forebears in the Pan-African movement. The Frente Polisario, as liberation movement, had achieved remarkable progress despite the harsh condition and the war and exile. They have worked tirelessly to build a progressive society rooted in social democracy, gender environment, and universal education that strengthen the social justice. We place particular emphasis to empower women and the youth, encouraging their participation and the leadership roles within the Polisario Front and the institution of Sahrawi Republic, including the National Secretariat, Parliament activity, initiatives, and civic engagement. We continue to nurture a generation capable of shaping democratic and prosperous future. Education and health remains central to our national priorities as they direct impact the social well-being of our people. The Polisario leadership continues to invest in extending access to education at all levels, from basic to high education, alongside vocational training and professional development. Our movement also recognizes the critical role of mass organization as foundation of effective political, social, and democratic transformation. Thus, the Polisario Front has built strong grassroots structures, including the national work. These institutions serve as vital platforms for participation, environment, and national unity. Internationally, the Polisario Front maintains solid relations with solidarity with the progressive movements and organizations across Africa, Latin America, and Caribbean, Europe, and Asia. In the spirit of mutual, it continues to be listed in the United Nations as non-self-governing territory and the United Nations Resolution Assembly 1514, and has remained on the United Nations agenda since 1963. In 1988, under the auspice of agreed to hold a free and fair referendum on Western Sahara. To this end, the United Nations Security Council established the United Nations Mission for Referendum in Western Sahara, MONARH, in 1991. However, the referendum has yet not implemented, and the mission continues to wait. It is a full mandate. It is crucial to point out that International Court of Justice is totally distinct and differentiated with Morocco. Finally, at the end of October 2025, the United Nations Security Council adopted Resolution 2797, renewed the mandate of the United Nations Mission for Referendum in Western Sahara for 1 year. The resolution reaffirmed the Sahrawi people called on both parties, the Polisario Front and Morocco, to resume negotiation without a precondition under the auspices of the United Nations and in spirit of good faith and genuine willingness to the Security Council also recommended both parties to present their respective proposals during the negotiation. In accordance with the principle of the United Nations Charter and relevant with the United Nations resolution for unwavering belief of principles of African unity, justice, and freedom. The struggle of Sahrawi people is integral part of for further the African quest for liberation and dignity toward the African continent free from colonial termination. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we give one more round of applause for all the solidarity messages? The next speaker we have is making an intervention. There are many other tasks he could have said yes to. There are many other things he could have spent time on. But because of the importance of the topics that we are discussing here tonight, agreed to make the time and to share with us his insights on not only the challenges that confront our continent, but also the future that we need to build. For someone who has spent his whole life finding concrete solutions for concrete problems facing the people, it's now my privilege to invite His Excellency John KWAKYE-ACKAH Kufuor, the former president.
I can't go up, so I'll say, okay. Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Ghana, it is my privilege to join all of you in this conference to celebrate the 80th anniversary of the historic fifth Pan-African Congress held in Manchester, England in 1945. That conference marked the beginning of the united cause for nationalities present then, where Dr. W.B. Du Bois of America, George Padmore of the Caribbean, Hastings Banda of Nyasaland, now Malawi, Kenya's Jomo Kenyatta, Nigeria's Obafemi Awolowo, and Jaja Wachuku, the Gold Coast Akwa-Adjei, and Kwame Nkrumah, who was the organizing secretary of the conference, African liberation, and of the colonized world. The theme for the Congress was, and I quote, the challenge to colonial powers, unquote, but in terms of humanity, regardless of race, tribe, religion, wealth, or national origin. Remarkably, within just 2 decades after the conference, their vision of liberating the country achieved, beginning with 1957 to become Ghana under the premiership of Dr. Nkrumah. The heroes we celebrate today vehemently propagated African unity and Pan-Africanism and aspired for a people liberated from the shackles of the enslaving practices that were endemic in imperialism, colonialism, and apartheid. We must admit that the euphoria that attended the initial success was to be exhausted barely within a decade after independence in the 1960s. the leaders and peoples of the liberated colonies would soon end the burden of the artificial borders of colonialism. The colonialists had put hurdles of overdependence on the colonial and neo-colonial structures. Even to date, and its endowment of natural resources. Further, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that the geographic arrangements of the continent is central. Europe to the north, the Americas to the west, and Asia to the east. These strategic advantages place the continent in a position to become, if I may say so, the central market of the world in the foreseeable future. To realize this, however, the continent must equip itself with meritorious and accountable leadership, which is hallmarked with highly informed and strategic negotiating skills. Distinguished audience, to realize this envisioned Africa, its peoples emulate and strengthen the self-confidence in championing a project called the Africa Public Interest Media Initiative, APIMI. This project's singular objective is to use highly the people of the continent to the stated strategic advantages of the continent, to interact from the ground. Presidents, meanwhile, they meet denying the continent people-to-people interaction. This way, the people's involvement with their governments will become real. I came to join with all of you to remind ourselves of this approach that may help or contribute towards Africa, and I wish you a successful.
Can we once more put our... We are about to receive the official opening of the conference. You see, the challenge with conferences is that they are always dangerous, and the last intervention made it clear. It's possible to come, to sit, to talk, and go home, and it's business as usual. If we look back to the conference in 1945, decisions were made, resolutions were passed, setbacks. There were setbacks after we lost Nkrumah, and I say we even though I'm not a Ghanaian, because the continent lost Nkrumah. But there were setbacks in the Congo. When the apartheid government killed Solomon Mahlangu, on his way to the gallows, he said, "Tell my people I love them. My blood will nourish the tree that will sprout freedom." Nourish the ideas of Nkrumah. We have to nourish Pan-Africanism. And there are some people in the world that have spent a lot of time doing that. So the next speaker will officially be opening our conference, whether as a historian, as a journalist, whether as the champion of the point that reparations must be paid for the historical injustices suffered by our continent's people and the people in the diaspora. Whether as a brave leader on this continent that recognizes that the struggles of the peoples of the AES are something that must be encouraged and supported. This next speaker is going to join us and open officially our conference. It is a tremendous honor for me, for everyone in the room, for all the people in whose name I am privileged to speak, to welcome to the stage a fellow follower of Nkrumah, a fellow Pan-Africanist. Can I welcome His Excellency, President John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. Thank you very much. I have a prepared speech, but I just want to comment on something. Yesterday I got a phone call, and it was from Prime Minister Mia Motley, of Barbados. And she and other Caribbean leaders were in Jamaica to express solidarity with the people of Jamaica following Hurricane Melissa. And for the first time, they were seeing the true extent of the destruction that had been caused. Now, one of the aspects of Pan-Africanism is solidarity. At the time the hurricane had struck and passed, we had not yet got the full extent of what the destruction was. We had not yet got the full extent of what it was the people of Jamaica and Cuba would want us to support them with. But out of our Pan-Africanist spirit as Ghana, we decided, let's put food and other things together and ship them to our comrades in Jamaica and Cuba.
8595. In Takwa, 050-406-2836. In Sunyani,
we sent medication, we sent plastic buckets and bowls, we sent mattresses, we sent blankets, and so it was the first time that we were learning exactly what it was they needed. And so she passed me on to Prime Minister Honest, and the Prime Minister said, our need is to give the people who have been displaced shelter so that they come out of the open rain and sunshine to have a place to lay their heads. And so if you can appeal to our African comrades to come to our aid, the extent of destruction in Jamaica is beyond our capacity alone to repair. And so the whole of this morning I've been with us for people to be able to get out of the weather. And so I stand here to say that in Pan-Africanist solidarity, those are some of the things that bond us together and that make us share the pain of each other. And so I don't know how far my voice will go in this Congress, but whoever is listening out there who can contribute, all our African states who can contribute something. And when I presented those things, I said, I don't believe that what we're giving will solve the problem, but symbolically, it's if we all come together and we give, it will make a significant difference. And so whoever is listening and all the other African states, Jamaica and the Caribbeans, Cuba are appealing for us to show solidarity by coming to their assistance. I'm intending to send some members of our 48th Engineers Army Regiment who are expert engineers, masons, carpenters, and all the others to go and help make makeshift shelter for people, and also to look for tarpaulins. They ask for tarpaulins. I think that's what we use to cover the big trucks that carry our cargo. And so we'll find some tarpaulins and ship them out to Jamaica so that we can provide accommodation for people. So I thank you very much. And President John Agyekum Kufuor, and to recognize my comrade, royal comrade of Esikadu, Nana. I want to warmly welcome you and all the other excellent people who are here, including our visitors. 80 years ago in October 1945, a small but determined group of African nationalists, intellectuals, students, workers, and freedom fighters gathered in Manchester to articulate a vision that would change the course of world history. The 5th Pan-African Congress became the turning point that accelerated the liberation of our continent from colonial domination. It was a Congress that insisted that Africa must take its destiny into its own hands, that colonialism was no longer tolerable, and that the African people must be free to govern themselves. Today, as we gather here in Accra, home of Kwame Nkrumah, home of George Padmore, W.E.B. Du Bois, and the Pan-African struggle, we are not merely commemorating history, we're renewing a covenant a covenant of responsibility, a covenant of unity, a covenant to build an Africa worthy of the sacrifices of those who came before us. When Nkrumah, Jomo Kenyatta, Ras Makonnen, Ami Ashud Garvey, and so many others walked into the Charlton Town Hall in Manchester, they carried with them the collective hope of millions of oppressed Africans. And their message was clear and loud. African people is not negotiable, and that political liberation must open the door to economic and social liberation. In the decades that followed, today we honor their courage, we honor their foresight, and we honor their belief that Africa can unite and be a continent of dignity and prosperity. 80 years on, the struggle has changed, but it is far from over. Our generation faces new forms of domination, some subtle, some obvious, some economic, some technological, some ideological and sources, but poor in global influence. We remain the custodians of the world's minerals, energy, educated or excluded from opportunity. We speak of integration, yet intra-African trade is less than 20%. And too many African youth today are losing faith in a continent that once promised them dignity, prosperity, and pride. The struggle of this moment is not for independence or from colonial domination. It is a struggle for economic transformation, technological sovereignty, climate justice, a fairer global financial order, political stability and democratic accountability, the full implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, and a united continent where Africans can travel freely on their own continent. These are the battles that define today's Pan-Africanism. These battles are more complex and challenging than the fights against colonial domination. Ghana has always been the heartbeat of the Pan-African agenda, and under our renewed leadership, we continue to uphold the principles that guided Nkrumah and his contemporaries. Our vision for a reset Ghana is inseparable from the vision of a reset Africa, an Africa that owns its own development, mobilizes its resources, and believes in its collective strength. We're deepening our commitment to running an economy that creates opportunities for all our people, a fair and transparent governance system that precision of strategic unity, a regional integration that brings us closer through trade, infrastructure, and innovation, and peace and security across all our borders, because instability anywhere in Africa affects us all. Ghana stands ready to work with all African nations, the African Union, our Caribbean brothers and sisters, and global partners committed to a just and equitable world. In this century, the fight for Africa's dignity includes the fight for climate justice. Africa contributes the least to global emissions and yet suffers disproportionately from droughts, cyclones, rising temperatures, and flooding. We must therefore approach global climate negotiations not as passive recipients of aid, but as equal partners demanding fairness, investment, and respect for our right to develop. The world must understand that Africa will not be asked to choose between development and sustainability. We demand both. Indeed, we deserve both, and we will pursue both. More than 60% of Africa's population is under 35 years of age. The next generation of Pan-Africanists will not gather in secret rooms or liberation movements. They will gather in innovation hubs, in coding laboratories, in creative studios, in universities, and even in digital communities. Our task is to equip